Good evening, welcome to Paxton Road TV. This is our special show tonight, and we are dealing with all things Tottenham as we normally do, but this one is going to be a very special one. We've got guests in the house, the Irish Hotspur, we have Matt Hayes. How are we both doing?
Doing good. Thanks for having us on.
Fabulous. And as usual, the resident guest up above, Mike-Hotspur Hustler, Darius3k. How are you two today?
I want to know if Arsenal are winning or losing.
Oh, yeah,
I'm not gonna lie. I am a little bit one eye open on that because I'm ready for that. I'm ready for the trolling if that happens. So
yeah, we need people to in the chat. Could you please let us know what's going on with the scoreline at the Arsenal game? We need to know that. But
that's all we've got in the season to look forward to, isn't it?
Trolling Arsenal. It's very true. More importantly, let's do this first thing. So like, subscribe, share, comment if you're watching. Thank you for watching. Please leave your comments down below in the comment section. All the links are in the description, and you can also find the links for both David and Matt below in the description. Right, let's deal with the subject at hand, the matter at hand. I'll just put the overlay up just so people can see it. What is it? Here we go. Hitch-in, Hitch-out. Steve, obviously, his name's not spelled with an IN, but that just wouldn't have worked if I'd have put EN, so I had to put IN to make it right. You know what I mean? But anyway, the point of the matter is, Steve Hitch-in, our chief scout, who's now been promoted, apparently, since September 2020 to technical performance director.
Yeah.
In September, he was given that title. But before that, he was a chief scout, 2017 February. So he was under Mauricio Pochettino's tenure and obviously Jose Mourinho's. We are going to start with a very, very easy question. We're going to come to Matt. What do you think of Steve Hitch-in?
I think of Steve Hitch-in the exact same as he thinks of the January transfer window. I hate it. He has had. I don't even know how people can back him at this rate, because you look at the players he's brought in, and look, I know we're going to get more into that a little bit later, but the players that he's brought in raises a lot of questions. It raises a lot more questions than it answers. But the bit that I'm most concerned about is the players that he hasn't got in. The amount of players have been identified by Spurs managers, the board, whoever it is who wants to bring in these players. I'm talking Ruben Diaz, Bruno Fernandes, a few more recent who I was thinking of a second, the names are evading me, Milan Skriniar as well. So many dealings that if he had gotten done, Spurs would be in a completely different situation. And if he is the chief director or chief scout, if he is the technical performance director, whatever fancy name you want to put on him, if he is the one that is in charge of getting these players in and these players haven't been brought in, he has failed. And that's it in a nutshell for me.
Very good opening gambit there. We'll come to you, David. Irish Hotspur, what's your thoughts on Mr. Steve Hitch-in?
Yeah, for me, it's Hitch-out, to be honest with you, because look, we sent the guy over to get Skriniar and he came back with the latest heels and the latest things off Milan Fashion Week. You know, it's not good enough for Tottenham Hotspur. Look, like you said, he's role under Pochettino, the players that came in, you know, questionable, and now then he's role under Jose Mourinho. Still couldn't get the right players in. So for me, there's not really a lot to say on this guy. Only look, the fact that if you're in his position, you're going to be offered the money you are to play the role you are, which is basically, you know, getting the cheapest players possible. You're going to take that job. But at the end of the day, he's a part of the problem, so he has to go. Hitch-out.
Hitch-out. Hitch-out. Strong words there, strong words. Okay, we're going to come to you next, Darius, on this one. He took over from Paul Mitchell back in 2017. Paul Mitchell was our chief scout before that. And some of the words in terms of reports that have coming out from what Paul Mitchell was saying, that he found it difficult to work under Daniel Levy. Steve Hitch-in's obviously been in this role and now been promoted to, as I said, technical performance director. So it appears he has a better relationship with Daniel Levy. Does this mean he's more of a yes man? So again, what do you think of Steve Hitch-in?
I feel like he's not done the job that he's come in and been required to do. It seems like all the time Spurs are not really getting their first choice options. It always seems like it's a third or fourth choice that we're getting, and we're linked up with so many. We're linked to so many players, and it never seems to be, like I said, the first choice. So I just think that if you've got somebody to come in and try and find talents and unearth talents, you need somebody who's dedicated to their craft, who's going to spend days, weeks on end, scouring the country, scouring Europe, scouring the Americas to find the right talent for your team. If you've got a guy who, like Matt said, hates transfer windows or hates a January transfer window, how can you have any faith in him to kind of do his best job? So for me, it has to be Hitch-Out. And again, looking at Paul Mitchell, he's found good players, and I'm not going to discredit some of the signings that Hitch-In's found, and how much of those go down to him, and how much obviously he's speaking to Levy and Levy saying yes or no to players. We don't know. I think there's probably a lot of the times he's finding players that maybe are better than what we think, but aren't maybe in the bracket of the price range that Spurs are looking to spend. So I think he's in a lose-lose situation, but he's also not doing a very good job at that. So at the end of the day, it's kind of like, what are we really getting out of him? If he doesn't want to be there and he's also not doing a good job, why are we holding on to him? So it just seems like a waste of time to me. And I bet there's plenty other scouts out there who actually probably want to look for players and want to actually find the best players for us.
I don't think he doesn't want to be there. The thing I say that is because he's taken obviously a promotion in terms of this new role that he's got. So he wants to be there, whether or not he's doing a good job. Is that
financially though? Is that financial reason?
Just another yes man though, isn't he?
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily him going out looking for the players. He's going to have a scouting network underneath him that he's in charge of. So he's obviously setting the bar as to what he and the board, or the manager should say, what they're looking for in terms of players, etc.
So Mike, I'll come to you then. What's your actual thoughts about Steve Hitch-In?
I would be very much. I'm very much Hitch-Out. I don't think there's been enough pressure placed on him in his actual role as chief scout. When you look at the performance of his performance in that role and the players, there's been a few. I'd say a few. I'd say there's been maybe a handful of players that he's brought in who I would deem to be good enough for Spurs, but then when you look at the bigger picture and the players he's brought in as a whole, they're not good enough. It's as simple as that. And I don't think it's all very well like the manager like Pochettino, Jose, etc., getting pressure because of performance in the hot seat and not getting the results that are required to see the team where we would like to see him as fans, but you've got, surely if the manager's being held accountable, then why isn't the chief scout? Because essentially Mourinho's obviously in dialogue with Hitch-In, telling him, look, these are the sort of players I'm looking for. Go out, speak to the scouting network who are going to be dotted around the world. Surely if he's not getting the players, then Hitch-In should have the pressure as to, well, the manager's failed, but when you look at the bigger picture, you're part of that problem. So if he's out, you've got to go out.
Very true.
Two managers have failed under this guy.
Exactly.
Two managers have failed under this guy, so surely he has to be a part of the problem. He's a common denominator between the two managers.
100%. Yeah. And then also, I mean, you look at the players that Paul Mitchell brought in as a whole, and then you compare them to the players or the quality that Hitch-In's brought in. That's the question in itself, isn't it? He's just, I don't even know how did Hitch-In even get the job? On what grounds did he get that job?
You set me up there because I didn't have enough time to put together the players that Paul Mitchell oversaw. So that's a little bit of a underhanded tactic there, Mr. Hustler. But I'll get you back.
I'm just hustling the stream.
Live in the stream.
But it's true, though. I mean, when you compare Mitchell, I mean, now look at him going off to... Mitchell's gone off to... Or he was at Leipzig.
He's now...
Look at the job that he's done there. The players he's brought in.
He's sporting director at Monaco now. So he's taken a job...
Is that where he is now?
Yeah.
I thought he was in England for some reason. I didn't know.
No, he's at Monaco. Sporting director. So again, he's gone up the rope as well.
And then if you look at prior to Tottenham, he was at Southampton. And look at the players that Southampton churn out year on year on year. I mean, if they had all the players that they've churned out and sold to different clubs, and you put them all together in the best 11, they'd probably be one of the best teams that this Premier League's ever seen.
Well, before I actually get into a couple of graphics, so I've only got a couple of graphics basically to show the transfer dealings that have been under Paul since his 2017 put in that position. But I want to ask you guys a question. It's an open question. Anybody can answer firstly. If you had 5 minutes, what would you want to find out from Steve? 5 minutes you've got. You've got any questions you want to ask him. What's the burning one that you want to ask? I'm going to come Darius first. Darius, what would you ask him?
What are you being told? Probably. When you mention about Paul Mitchell, Steve Hitch-IN, Jose Mourinho, and sort of the players that they want, there's not any continuity in it. It goes back having a good scouting system and a man who can actually find players who can fit your team perfectly is such an important part to a successful team. And if you haven't got that, I don't know how a team can fully function over a period of time. You can have a good 11, you can have a good squad, but over a period of time, I don't know how a team can function. So I would just ask him who is telling you what to do, what identity, what sort of continuity is there in place for you to kind of not have to look for a Jose Mourinho style player and then have to look for a player in a completely different skill set for the next manager. I think that also doesn't help his job, because I know the next manager that comes in apparently is going to be a young, progressive manager playing attacking football. He's going to be completely different to the sort of players that Jose Mourinho is going to want in. So maybe there was a year of work that was pushed towards maybe data and data analysis and stuff like that was pushed towards finding Jose's players. That's all been scrapped now. So for him, I want to know who's telling him what to do, and is there any sort of idea when there isn't a manager to sort of find players that are gonna fit a general system or a general identity for Tottenham, because at the moment there isn't. We're just going off what managers want, and that's going to leave a very, very unbalanced, muddled squad at the end of the day. So
it's very difficult to find exactly what his job role is. I've tried to go through things on the internet. It's very difficult to find anything on the Spurs website, but we've all seen the documentary, I hope. He seems very cozy. One of the things that's quite key that he said was he works closely with the manager. So again, supposedly works closely with the manager to identify players. He did that with Poch, supposedly did that with Jose as well. Matt, I come to you. What would you want to ask if you had 5 minutes with Steve?
I'd ask who's in charge of transfers, who identifies the transfer targets, who prioritizes them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, who decides who's sold from Spurs. Because look, we've known for some time that the manager isn't the one who actually picks these players. You can go back to Pochettino, his title being manager, yet towards the end of his time, he was saying, maybe I should be called head coach instead. Then Jose comes in and all of a sudden, Jose's head coach. I don't think managers have, of course, to some extent they do have a say, but I don't think our managers have enough say over which players are brought in and which players are sold. And I'd like to know who it actually is, because you can look at the 7 signings we made last summer. Some of them you can say are Jose Mourinho signings. I think Pierre-Emile Højbjerg is a Jose Mourinho signing. I think Sergio Reguilón was. But then you're looking at Joe Hart, Matt Doherty. Are they Jose Mourinho signings? They don't seem to fit into the kind of identity and the characteristics of players that Jose wants to identify. And for me, a very worrying thing is we're sitting here, is it 2.5 weeks since we sacked Jose Mourinho, and yet still the stories are going. Spurs are interested in Jerome Boateng and Yannick Vestergaard, regardless of which manager comes in. Spurs want to extend Bale's loan, regardless. Vinicius will go back regardless of what manager comes in. And that's not good enough, because like a very good point there from Darius, it is players and a certain team from different managers that are all kind of mushed together into this shocking cohort of players that just simply do not know how to play each other. And for me, that's kind of reminiscent of the team after Jose Mourinho left, because they had a bit of the kind of the players that were left over, Ferguson, they had Moyes, Van Gaal, Jose players all in there together, and it simply wasn't working. And that could be a very good explanation as to why this team isn't performing, because if you look at our players individually, there are some incredibly talented players in there. I mean, you've Kane, you've Son, Bale, Lo Celso, Ndombele, Ali, Alderweireld, Reguilón. They're extremely talented players, but for some reason, it's not working. And what needs to happen is we need to figure out who is actually the one deciding these players, which players come in, because there's no doubt in my mind it's not the manager.
Great, good points. David, I'm just going to read out this quote. I'm going to read out this comment here from Anthony Gray. To make it easier, can someone please list the players Hitch-IN brought in, help us debate and compare to Mitchell? Well, Anthony, I have got that for you in a little while, but we're still asking a couple of questions. So I want to get David's opinion. If he wanted to ask a few questions of Mr. Hitch-IN, what would you want to find out from him?
Look, for me, Steve Hitch-IN, you were out there for a week. Can you tell me the best sites to go and see when I'm in Milan? The best hotel to stay in, because you're out there for a week and you didn't do anything. Best restaurants to eat in, stuff like that. The second question I'd have for him is, so we've seen this season. We got in Doherty, even though we were linked with Max Aarons, Castagna that ended up at Leicester. We had a chance of getting Bruno Fernandes, but we ended up signing Lo Celso instead. So why is it that we're always getting in the cheapest players? Like, is it your option? Is that, like, are you getting in your preferred option, or is Levy putting you under constraints and saying no, you have to find the cheapest player for that position? And then because what else I'd like to know is, I'd actually just ask him to define exactly what his role is, because for me, look, I think he's a part of the board, to be honest with you. I think he's a part of the board. Yeah. I think he's just another yes man in place. He's another part of the problem. He's failed both managers. And to be honest with you, there wouldn't really be much questions asked. I just love to give him a nuggie, wake him up a bit, slap him and do his job.
That might be all he needs, to be honest. It might be all he needs.
He might well do that, but I'm sure we shouldn't be doing that sort of stuff. Anyway, thank you, Mike. Just your last point on that.
What do you want to ask? I think the boys have actually come up with good questions, and the only thing I actually like the questions, especially like with what Matt said, and I would agree with that. I mean, the only couple of questions I would add, or I'd like to add to what's already been mentioned before, would be: one, how did you get the job? And two, do you actually think, Mr. Hitch-IN, you've performed well in your job? Truthfully,
that's a great question, to be honest.
And that would be how I'd leave it. I think the rest of the questions, I agree with the questions that have been asked, but those are the two additional questions that I would ask him.
Mine, I've got a few things that I would want to ask him. Firstly, I'd want to know: does he need to have a director of football? Do we need a director of football at Spurs? Because that's one of the things, is someone who's going to fundamentally deal with all these aspects, not just about, who comes in, just the whole aspect of like that bridge between the management in terms of the playing staff and obviously at board level. And is he fulfilling that role as well as being responsible for the scout? Because I think they're two separate roles. He should be accountable for it, but he shouldn't necessarily be doing both of them. So,
well, is it Trevor Birch who's director of football technically by title? Is it? I remember
they've brought in. I think, I can't remember if it's Trevor Birch as a football operations director. There's someone who's brought in as football operations, which is different. It's not a director of football in terms of the sense of playing staff and listening and having that accountability and that bridge. So I want to know that what's going on there. I keep going back to the Amazon documentary. It looks all very cozy. Obviously, that's for TV as well. But it's like, they're having lunch and they're like cheersing on glasses of wine and stuff. And Daniel's having a nice time and asking him questions and blah, blah, blah. And it looked like Jose was doing very much the same. I don't know what the relationships are. I want to know a bit more about these relationships. Does he get grief? He brings in these players. He could rightfully turn around and say, you know what, I got this player. He was brilliant when I saw him out there. And some things happen when he's been brought here. I don't know. When we get into the list, we'll see these players and we can make our own assumptions about that.
I just Googled Birch, and he left Tottenham back in September 2020. He's now the English Football League chief executive.
I've got no clue what's going on upstairs, and that's already.
So
I don't know what's going on.
I mean, the question is, I don't think Tottenham have a football a director of football, but
Daniel Levy, he does that role. I'm sure he does that role. He does everything.
You probably are right.
He manages a team. He asks the questions. He says who plays. He brings players in. He sells players. He doesn't sell players if you don't get enough money from him. He's basically the one-man shop. Everything goes up to him. He is responsible and accountable. So we
just summarised up the show there, lad.
It's done.
It's all done. It is all done. But right, okay. What I'm going to do now. This will help some of the viewers be able to compare some of the information that we're trying to decipher here. So I'm going to remove this banner going across the bottom of the screen in case there was any. So, arrived, as I said, February 2017. So I'm not going to go to anything before that. These are the players he's brought in. 17-18. You can see. Number 6, Lucas Moura, Sergio Aurier, Fernando Llorente, Juan Foy, Paulo Gazzaniga. Spent a good deal of money. 111 million, if you want to call that a good deal of money in these times. Nothing in 18-19 season. We decided we didn't want to buy players there. On to 1920, Tanguy being £54 million worth of player. You can see Stevie B, Ryan Sessegnon, Giovanni Lo Celso, Jack Clark, Gedson Fernandez brought in on loan. 150 million shelled out in 1920. 2021, Giovanni Lo Celso, Sergio Reguilon, Matt Doherty, Pierre Højbjerg, Joe Rodon, Vinicius, Joe Hart, Gareth Bale. Again, some of them account for loans. But close on to £100 million spent this season. We've gone on to spend 323 million in the 4 years that he's there. Now, just to counterbalance that, and whether or not he's involved in the dealings in terms of players going out, I'll put the players that have gone out under his tenure. And I think David's got some points about this that I'm sure he wants to raise. We sold Carl Walker. We sold Kevin Wimmer. Kevin Wimmer! Bloody hell, that's a name. That really goes
name.
up. That's a real name.
Who was he great friends with? Son, wasn't it? Him and Son had like a great relationship.
Something like that.
I don't know. I don't really care. He's gone. Nabil Bentaleb, Clinton the G, Federico Fazio. Wow. We got rid of him and we only got 2.8. The Vincent Janssen one was a loan deal. That was just a loan fee that we got for him because he was sold for 8.1 million in 2020 or 2019-20 season. So you can see we've got rid of players to the value of 166. We've actually totally spent under Steve Hitch-IN 156 million, close on 157 million. I'll firstly come to you, Darius. Given some of them players that have come in and out of the club, can we say that we haven't spent money? Has he done enough in terms of players coming in to justify still being in a role? Because as I said, I don't think we've improved in the 4 years he's been here in terms of playing staff. What's your thoughts on the players in and out that have come through Spurs under him?
First of all, I just want to say that is an absolutely horrible picture choice of Steve Hitch-IN you could have put up there. I didn't even want to look at that picture. But no, I think it's difficult because there's good players, but then there are some really, really bad players, and one of them that really points out to me, and I was saying this a month ago or so. I said if we didn't actually spend like the little bits and drobs of money on these players who we think might come clean, and actually kind of collated all the money into a big sale, kind of similar to what Liverpool did with their goalkeeper and centre back, we might be in a better situation. Because if you look at that Lo Celso one, that was what, 27 million in 1920. But don't forget, there was a £15 million loan fee as well. So altogether, we spent £42 million on Lo Celso. And the asking price for Bruno Fernandes, I believe, was £50 million or 55. So when you look at things like that, it just doesn't make any sense to me. If you've got, and that's the thing, he was our number one target, Bruno Fernandes. So if you've got a number one target and you're trying to pussyfoot around basically and trying to take a risk and maybe put 10 million in there because it's not as risky and you can get your money back, instead of doing that, you need to take a risk. Everybody says if you don't take a risk, you're not going to succeed. So take that risk, spend that money, and if it doesn't work out, you've got a 26 or 25-year-old or 24-year-old, I think he was at that point, Bruno Fernandes, who you still have value in. If you're doing that with a 29-year-old player in his prime, okay, maybe you might be taking a bigger risk that might not need to be taken. But somebody who's in their 20s, mid-20s, I'm sorry, but I would personally take a bigger risk and just spend that extra 10 million and see where it goes, because I know for a fact those players like Clinton and G and Nkudu, who barely saw, what, 2 blades of grass on white...
Say that again.
Clinton and G and George, Kevin and Kudu. I bet they didn't even run 100 meters on the White Hart Lane or Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. So for me, why even do that? Why even waste your time? If you're not even if the player's not good enough to even get a position on the bench, even in the 11, don't take the risk. If the person's good enough, I'd take the risk on the person who's good enough. And if they're not, like I said, at least you might be able to make a profit on them.
Is he getting some sort of profile? Because some of these players, and we mentioned it, Clinton the G. I'm going to come to you, David. What's your thoughts about a net spend of 157 million over 4 years? And we've got in some right pony in there. Kevin Wimmer had to go. But again, the players that came in, as Darius mentioned, we've got here, bloody, what's his name? Gedson Fernandes. What's that about?
With a 50 million buy option.
Talk to me.
Look, it's the same thing we keep seeing. So when we signed Sessegnon, we needed a left back, but we went and paid 20-odd million for Sessegnon. Not good enough to come into Tottenham at the time. Now we ended up loan now. Pochettino wanted a winger. We got in Jack Clark, paid 20-odd million, 20 million for the guy. You know what I mean? Just to loan him out. Like Fulham and Leeds and these sort of clubs are laughing at us. As the years have gone on, the players we're getting out of the club that we're selling are getting better and better. The likes of Clinton and G and Nkudu, straight away, you should lose your job and never be given another job ever. The likes of Vincent Janssen, the guy couldn't even move. You know what I mean? Like, who sanctions these deals? Like, this guy, honestly, like I would even accept 50-50 as a ratio of what he's got right to wrong. The guy probably has about 20% right. And it's absolutely shocking. But then it's 20% right in the players he's bringing in. But then we're selling our best players. So, eventually that's just going to end up to the situation where we're at now, where we're just a team full of sidemen that were brought in to fill gaps. We're never good enough to be here. And this is the result of what we're seeing now. And this is the result of it when you get your business dealings wrong. Spending money at Tottenham, I don't think is the fans' major issue. Yeah. It's how we spend our money.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Like, we actually, I think, have a bigger net spend than Real Madrid over the last few years. Mm. You know what I mean? And the problem is how we spend that money. Like, instead of pushing the ball out and spending the extra 5-10 million, we could have had Bruno Fernandes, but you're not just buying the player, you're buying his mentality. Look at his mentality. He walked into United and he's snapping and snaring at players in the dressing room. He's kicking up a stink to get the best out of them. We got in Gio Lo Celso, who's happy to go and have a bit of turkey with some of his other mates there over Christmas and go missing for a while. You know what I mean? And like, this is the problem. You buy cheap, you get weak mentality players, and weak mentality players do not win you a thing. They don't. Like, we literally half of that list. We're happy to come here, collect the wage, put on a balaclava, collect the wage, rob the club, and leave again. And this is the problem. 20% right out of players brought in, and then you're selling your best players. And this is why we're in this situation. Steve Hitch-IN has done an awful job, and he needs to go. He has to go now, today. Right now, he has to go.
I'll just add into that factor as well. We were looking at Jack Grealish around about that sort of time he came in 2016, 2017. And I think Villa wanted a £25 million, I think it was. And we were quibbling over something like 5 million at the time. I don't think Spurs wanted to pay.
And how much did we spend on Nkudu and NG together combined?
Oh, well, here we go. Let's have a look back on some of this. Do you know what I'm saying? I can't remember what we've got, but Getson Fernandes we brought in his own. But look at some of them. We paid 9.9 million for Jack Clark. We paid £25 million for Brian Sessegnon. We paid 27 million for Steve Berger. Now, we can't obviously blame Steve Hitch-IN for wasting the Bell money because he wasn't around in that. But certainly some of these monies that have been spent, as I said, looking at number 6, 38 million pounds.
60 million on Aurier and Sanchez. Can you imagine that?
Oh my God.
You could have got Diaz for that.
60 million. There you go. And the thing is also, I think, David, you made a great point about selling our best players. We sold our best players. And the thing that annoys me the most is not even selling your best players. It's replacing them with people who aren't even as good or on the level of them, or not even like a slight level or the potential to reach that level. You're buying players who are significantly worse. So you're hoping, praying are going to get to that level. In my opinion, Danny Rose obviously hasn't been in the squad for 2 years now or so. Reguilon's probably the first player who we've really said, okay, he's on that level or can reach that level of Danny Rose. We still haven't replaced Kyle Walker. Vertonghen hasn't been replaced yet, in my opinion. Dembele could be replaced by Ndombele, but again, I think that by the time we're going to have to replace Dembele, we've had to replace Wanyama. We've needed to replace other players as well. So if like I said, if you take longer to replace these players, it's going to build up and build up and build up, and then other players are going to get older, and then we're going to look in a year and 2 years time, and Son and Kane are going to be in their 30s, and then you're going to have to replace them as well, and we're still going to look at 34-year-old Sissoko. Hopefully not, but you never know what could happen.
I want to come to Matt. Who on this list, Matt, do you think has been anywhere close to a success for Spurs?
God, I don't think you could really say any of them have yet. I mean, look at Lucas Moura. That night in Amsterdam, of course, was an amazing moment for the club. I think with Ndombele and Celso, they both had a really difficult first year, and I think still have to do a little bit more to be counted as successes, and definitely have to do a lot more to kind of warrant those transfer fees that have come in. Højbjerg, I suppose, for 50 million, given what he's done for us this season, you can argue he may have done enough. Gareth Bale on loan, but there's no one that stands out as a possible success. And some people argue that Steve Hitch-IN is to some extent used as a scapegoat, because at the end of the day, he is given a certain amount of money and told, okay, go and get these players, or go and get the best players, whatever ones the manager wants, or if it is the manager who's coming into them. And you can say, look, fair enough, he's not given the funds that other clubs are given to compete with the likes of City, Liverpool, Chelsea, and all that. And look, that's fair enough. I can accept that. But you're looking at that money that's been spent, and I just had a quick look there a second ago. The players that have been brought in for similar fees in the time that Steve Hitch-IN has been there. You've Everton brought in Watford brought Richarlison in for £11 million. Newcastle spent 20 million on Saint-Maximin, and now some of the players are after slipping out of my mind. You have some incredible players from Brentford like Neil Maupay, Ollie Watkins, Saïd Benrahma. From the Championship, you're going to get relatively cheap, right? Souček for West Ham, Ismail Assar at Watford, 30 million. Still cheaper than Davinson Sanchez. This relatively small amount of money that he's been given isn't enough to compete with City, compete with Liverpool, United, Chelsea on a consistent basis, but it should be enough to be there or thereabouts. And right now, Spurs simply are not there.
Are we identifying the right profile of player? This is my point. What are we looking for from a player? Because I know when we brought Pierre Højbjerg in, everybody in the fan base said we needed that player. Mm-hmm. But some of the players that they brought in, I'm questioning whether we actually needed them. Gedson Fernandes, I keep going back to it. Yeah, but what did we need with him as a player? We didn't need him.
You look at Sanchez. We paid the big money because he was identified as the future star centre back. So that when Vertonghen and Toby were getting older, that he was the guy to come in. That's why we shelled out that amount of money on him. The guy doesn't even know when the ball's coming over his head. You know what I mean? We spent 38 million when really we could have just spent 100 quid and got a sat-nav instead, because the guy doesn't know where the ball is. Then you look at Ndombele was brought in to replace Moussa Dembele. The guy's not even fit. It's true. You look at Lo Celso, brought in to kind of, in a way, be Christian Eriksen's replacement as a 10. The guy can't. The guy just takes too long on the ball, or else takes too much out of the ball. You look at Lucas Moura. It's took us 4 or 5 years to find his best position, and even then, his attacking output isn't great. The players we're bringing in cannot do the basics of football. Pass, move, you know what I mean? And it's sickening. The list that we're bringing in compared to the list that we've let go, it's absolutely sickening. It's a joke.
You are completely right. So I'll let you guys talk on it, because I just want to put on this was really what upset me, because it's the players, some of these players that are left. Now, I think we were forced into having to do the Kyle Walker thing. He wanted to leave. We got a decent amount of money for him. Do you know what I'm saying? So I can't really complain that. But we let Moussa Dembele go for pretty much peanuts. We let him go.
Imagine he was there for that final as well, though.
But I don't think he was. It was that, because we've got some injury-prone players in the club anyway. Look at Lamela. He only played this season, but Eric Dyer. Do you know what I'm saying? The list goes on. Moussa Dembele, when he was at Spurs, they all said was probably the most gifted player that all of them played with. You couldn't get the ball off him.
Harry Kane said that last week.
Yeah, and that was the season, 18-19 season. We let that guy go for peanuts. And I cannot understand. Christian Eriksen, the following year, I know we were forced to sell him as well, but
did well to get a fee for him as well.
Did we have not even want to go? Did he even want to go? I don't recall him actually ever saying, I want to leave Spurs at the end of the season. It was like he was just... It was decided.
It was Levy. Levy knows he was injury prone, and he was just trying to get money before the issue actually came out. But whereas we could have actually kept him and used him for the rest of that season.
I was going to say, for the sake of £5 million, it's not worth getting rid of him. Even if he's only fit for 20 games, I'd have him for 20 games. Like Bale, if they're fit for 20 games a season, if we're getting wins, if 90% of those games that they're playing end up in wins, then surely they're worth their weight in gold there. But you look at, I just saw Lucas Moura, £25 million we bought him, and we quibbled over an extra $5 million to buy Jack Grealish at the same price. I mean,
madness.
It's
Jack
just
Grealish one haunts me to this day, because can you imagine having Jack Grealish in our club now for the £5 million? That's nothing compared to what the value of that guy's.
Well, if you look at we wanted Bruno Fernandes and Jack Grealish. If we had those two in our side, along with the players that we've got now, it's depressing thinking about it. I'm telling you. I came in positively.
Yuri Tielemans at Leicester, when he was playing for Anderlecht at 16 in the Champions League, Tottenham were looking at him. When he moved to Monaco, Tottenham was still looking at him. And here he is in the Premier League in a Leicester jersey. How does that happen? That happen? Like, everyone knows the kid is going to be quality. Why not pay that money? And the same with Jack Grealish. Pay that money. But we didn't. What we went and done is got rejects from PSG, Serge Aurier and Lucas Moura. That's what we ended up with.
Thing is, saying that, David, and I think you've hit the nail on the head without actually saying it, is you look at Leicester City and their scouting network. Whoever's at Leicester, their chief scout, we should be knocking on their door and saying, look, we'll give you double whatever Leicester are paying. Come to Spurs and sort our mess out, because the job that the players that they've recruited, and for what they've paid peanuts pretty much, haven't they? Let's be honest. That would pay dividends for us as a club at Spurs.
But this is the thing: a 16-year-old kid who's got potential, kind of like Odegaard. It almost seems risk-free to me. If you've got a kid who's not even 2 years away from 18, 100%. You're going to be able to flip 50, even 20 mil. I guarantee you, if you have a kid who's very, very good at football at 16, who can play with men in the Champions League, in 4 years' time, he'll be worth 20 million at least, even if you make even. So for me, I don't really see an excuse with those players. If you're going to spend 30 million on a player, like for example, Fofana, I was a little bit like, okay, Fofana's a bit questionable, 18-year-old, 30 million. But he came good. And now look at them. He's probably one of the best young centre-backs. That's a risk. But for me, 15 million for a 16-year-old who's been playing in the Champions League, like you said, David, that's not a risk. You know he's going to get
Madison was another one from Norwich we were looking at him. Didn't sanction the deal. He's now
as well from Luton.
Riskless things.
And David, you know who actually recommended him to us? David Pleat. David Pleat, and he apparently, I was reading up on this, and I can't remember the players off the top of my head that he's recommended to Spurs. Although I think Grealish was one of them, but Maddison was one of those players that Pleat recommended and pleaded with Tottenham to sign him because he thought of him highly and rated him. And now look at him at Leicester, thriving, isn't he? I mean,
another one at Leicester.
Matt, I'm going to come.
Go on.
Sorry, I'm just going to want to come to Matt. Do you think, and this is one of the things, and I don't know what the tools are, but do you think he's been given the tools for the job? And what I mean by that, it's difficult to find out exactly how many scouts we have, who goes where. Is there a European network? Is there a South American network? I don't know all those details. But given the amount that we've spent, because we've got a net spend, as I said, of close to 157 million over the 4 years he's been here, do you think he's been given the tools in order to do his job? That's Mr. Hitch-IN, that is.
I don't know. I honestly don't. Look, knowing Daniel Levy, I think it's probably a safe assumption to make that he hasn't been given the tools. But for me, to some extent, that's not important. And I made this argument in regards to Jose Mourinho before he was sacked. And Jose is not the right man for the Spurs job. Beyond any doubt, he's not the right man to bring success to this football club. But that's not to say he's not a really good manager. I still believe if you put Jose Mourinho into any team and you give him money and you give him the players that he wants, he will be successful. So Steve Hitch-IN, whether he has been given the tools or not to be successful, that brings up the question of his capabilities. He might be an incredible chief scout. He might be really good at identifying the Ruben Diaz's, the Bruno Fernandez's, but Spurs aren't going to be the club to buy those players. So if he is not capable of identifying, look at Andy Robertson gone to Liverpool for 8 million. Like I said, at Maxman, Richarlison, James Justin to Leicester for 8 million as well. If he's not able to identify those players, well, then he shouldn't be the man here. Because we don't need to find a man and give him the tools that, we should find the right man and give him the tools that he wants. But that's not how Spurs operate. We have a set structure. This is how we're going to do it. So what we need to do is find the right man to work under that, in that situation, in that environment. And Steve Hitch-IN, as he has shown with those signings that we've seen there, just simply isn't that man. So
has he got enough information? Because I'm still going back to the point with this player profile thing. And again, when you change managers on a regular basis, if he is doing this communication with the manager has a bit of a say. So the managers who come in will have different philosophies, different profiles of players that they want. Poch may have identified certain players. Steve said, okay, I'll try and get you that player. He's gone out, brought certain such in. Again, are we placing too much blame onto him? Because again, there's lots of factors why players don't work out. Adaptability, different leagues, just change of environment, price tag. So some players come with a price tag. It's a bit too much for them. They can't cope. I think coming to Spurs, there's always a little bit of added pressure because of the way that we do our business. Players, and I'll give you the prime example. Matt Doherty this season came in from Wolves blindingly. We brought him as a fullback, but he was playing wing back. Who's making these decisions about the player profiles? This is what I don't understand. Surely that communication was with Jose. Jose, this is a player we're thinking about. Jose, I really like, Matt Doherty, blah, blah, blah. But then we're trying to play him in the back four. What's going on there? This is what I don't understand.
That's the thing. Mike. His intention for for signing Doherty was to kind of do this whole system where one fullback defends and one goes forward. And that's so niche to Jose Mourinho and what was going on at Spurs that we kind of stumbled upon Reguilon, and that kind of changed our plans, but we'd already signed Doherty. So it's like, there's no idea whatsoever. And that's why I think a director of football is needed and could help, because maybe there's just a little bit more of an idea and a plan and a track going forward, because at the moment it seems like Hitch-IN's kind of choosing a few players that might fancy the price tag that Daniel Levy's going for, that might fit the player or might fit the player quality that a manager wants. And we're just kind of taking a risk. We're not, maybe like a FSG, we might have to use a bit more data analysis where they hone in specifically and target individuals solely based on the data that they provide and fit a system like Klopp. But again, that comes with infrastructure. So like Matt said, if we're not hiring a guy to do a job that he's been hired to do, if he can find 60 million pound players, there's no point in having him, because we're not going to sign him.
This comment here from Kevin Murray, this is a good comment here. I'd ask him, this is a question he would want to ask. Is it more important, the price or quality of the player? Because those are the questions I want to know. Does Steve Hitch-IN have to work under a budget in terms of, if a player is valued at, say, 100 million and he's told by Daniel, sorry, you can only go up to this value, then he's obviously going to be hampered by what he can do. So that's a very valid point. But just on that, go on. Just on that, though, quickly, right? There's ways you can work around that. I 100% get what you're saying. I do believe that value does affect the quality of the player you're getting. But then you start going and you target the best players between 16 and 25 then. Players that you can bring in that are going to be world class, have all the attributes, the right mentality, that then you can start selling on for massive money. So it's how you operate within that budget. I've listened to loads of managers talk about this in the director of football, and every single one of them have come back and said, with modern day football, compared to the way managers used, where they used to be over transfers and stuff, with the way modern day football is and the business side of it, you do need a director of football. But with that director of football, okay, you can keep one in place at a club if he's bringing in the right players. But he has to adapt to what the manager wants under different managers, when the manager's brought in. So if Jose Mourinho is going, I want this type of player, you go and work within your budget and get him in that type of player, not the type of players that you think you can bring in. So and then get the manager to work with. It is never going to work like that. So this is what I'm saying about this director of football. We should have somebody overarching. So regardless of who the manager comes in, we have a philosophy, we have a style, we have a profile that fits what the club's going to do. We don't have that, because I think we just kind of bounce from manager to manager. Poch was a project. All right, it didn't work out. Jose's a proven winner. It's not worked out. What's next? It doesn't appear that there's a philosophy in terms of that side of things. So again, are we not looking at some of the academy graduates? Are they coming through enough? If we can't go out and spend 60, 70 million on a Ruben Diaz, are we trying to do something within our academy? We've got one of the best training facilities in world football, one of the best stadiums in world football. There's no excuse for players not being able to come in to have the best of the best in terms of the facilities. But who's bringing these players in specifically at the younger levels? Is he overseeing, these youngsters coming into the club? What's going on there? I don't know.
That's only going to get harder now with these Brexit rules as well. So it's a lot of nurturing from within is going to have to happen. And I don't really see. There's not, apart from Harry Kane and Harry Winks, which I don't know if I can count him as one of a success. Who else has really come from that academy and thrived? There's not really any sort of pipeline into the first team. I think there needs to be a lot more attention put on that academy, because like I said, even if those players don't become first team players for 10 years in the future, if you get them into that first team and get them playing, you never know, a mid-table to lower table Premier League club might come and snap them up for about 10-15, and that 10-15 can be the difference between signing a player or not. So there's so many different things that can help our transfer issues, and I think that we're not capitalizing on it, and there's no communication between anyone. There's not any communication between the academy to say, right, this kid's going to go up to here, he can go on loan. There's nothing. So I just don't see how we have a chance.
But then if you look at our academy at the moment as it is, the under-23s and the under-18s, they have got there's some special talent in there at the moment.
Hopefully they can get a chance. Yeah.
And they have, to be fair, to Mourinho, he did try and give a couple of them the odd starts here in Europa and well, 1 or 2 games in the Premier League. Although they only came on for a few minutes and stuff, he tried to give him some experience where he could. I mean, Scarlett, for example. I mean, that kid's an absolute goal machine in the academy, and at some point, the crossroads will come to: do we loan him out or do we bring him into the first team? You got Alfie Devine. You got that Dennis Shirk. Did we say pronounce Churkin or Sirkin? Sirkin. Dennis Sirkin. Churkin. So this
European takeover of football. That is cool.
We're trying to be exotic there. Trying to go the exotic name. We don't want to know what you call your missus, Mike. We don't want to know.
That's for another show. Definitely for another show.
Let's wait till it's at least 9 o'clock for that. But there is some talented youngsters that I think are on the cusp of first team football. They're still very young, but the academy seems to be in a far better place than maybe what it was, say, between 5 and 10 years ago. So I don't think the academy. I think it's going in the right direction. The people that are involved in that academy, your likes of your Masons, your Chris Powells, etc. I think the academy's will be in a good place.
Well, I'm going to come to this comment here from Mark. Mark Gray, thanks for watching, Mark. I'd ask it, and this is the game, going back to the question to ask Steve Hitch-IN. I'd ask him how Leicester buy the right players at the right price and improve their team, and we can't. On this basis, he should be off and out the door. And I tend to agree with this guy. I tried to start this whole thing off by being a bit impartial, by thinking, has he got the right tools? Has he been given enough money? Has he got the right pro profile? Blah, blah, blah. But the more I think about it, there are others out there, particularly in the Premier League, who are doing better with less and getting more out of these players. So what is it? Is it a combination of different things? Are our expectations too great for some of these players? I'm not quite sure, because you've got Leicester bringing in players like Fofana and people like that, and they're just blowing the league away. Do you know what I'm saying? So why don't we bring in someone like an NG, a Clinton NG, and blow the league away? I thought Steven Bergwijn was supposed to do that, and
we don't give him a chance, do we?
That's the thing. We're looking at world-class talent, aren't we? Whereas Leicester, they seem to have that right balance, whereby they haven't got a team of world-class players, but they've got a team of very good players that give the team balance as well as a bit of quality. And look where they are. I mean,
so then the question then is if we're bringing these players in, are we doing enough with the players that are brought in? Because, like I said, no one knew about Fofana, mate. Wrong phrase. Maybe they knew about
Matt has something to say there.
Yeah, I'm going to let Matt come in and say that. What's your thoughts on that?
I was just going to say, Leicester, in terms of their departures, are really similar to us. And you can criticize whoever for allowing our best players to go, but you look at Leicester and their departures in the last couple of years. Last year they sold Ben Chilwell. Of course, they're starting left back. He went to Chelsea. The year before that, they let Harry Maguire go to Manchester United. They had Andy King and Danny Drinkwater, some of their midfielders, go. The year before that, Riyad Mahrez and N'Golo Kante. They're selling their best players. Letting your best players go is, to some extent, a sustainable footballing model. You can look at RB Salzburg letting Haaland, their manager Jesse Marsch in the future. Patson Daka is going to go. Szoboszlai is well going to Leipzig. You have Ajax letting De Jong, De Ligt, all these fantastic players go. There is a situation where you can lose your best players and still achieve not the heights of success, but be somewhat like progressive with the way your club is going.
Still competing.
Absolutely. And there are two things that you need to do for that. One of them is not let Christian Eriksen run his contract down to 6 months to go before letting him go, because you're losing one of your best players and you are in no position whatsoever to replace him. And the other is, and you can even bring Southampton into this bracket as well, you need an academy that consistently produces quality players. And like Darius said, we've Kane and Winks in our first team. Look great. Winks for 18 or so months was a brilliant player. Harry Kane is, for me, probably the second best striker in the world. He's so close to Lewandowski. But what we need is, we can't get the best part of the model of one model and the best part of another model and merge them together and expect it to be successful, because it's simply not going to work. And back at the point of a director of football, if you look at the across Europe, there are certain teams that dominate certain countries. Bayern Munich, They have Hassan Salihamidzic as their director of football. PSG have Leonardo. Juventus have Fabio Paratici. In Spain, it's not the same, I suppose, as a director of football, but they have presidents in Real Madrid having Florentino Perez, and Barcelona and whoever the hell is their president now, because it changes every day.
It's Laporta now, isn't it?
Laporta, that's it.
Yeah.
You need some structure, and you need to. And I bring this back. I'm doing a stream next week, which is all about the direction of Spurs. We don't know the direction we're going. Daniel Levy doesn't know where he wants to bring this club, because he wants to sell your best players, make a bit of profit there, get a bit out of the academy, get a bit from here, and it's just not going to work. It really, really isn't. He wants to get the best of every single world and merge them all together, and the result of that is the free fall that this club is in the verge of hitting.
Very true.
But it does still go down to the fact that the scouting network, because if you got scouts that obviously work in the youth setup, you got scouts in the senior setup. To get the right talent in the academy, you need a good scouting network. To get the right talent in the senior team, again, you need the right scouting network. So, and who heads up the scouting network? It all boils back through to Hitch-IN.
It does. He's accountable. I'm going to come to some comments, because we've got quite a few comments coming through, and I want to, some might just prompt a bit of discussion between us as well. So Mike Gregg is, we decide to avoid paying an extra 5 million or 10 million when you get this back, and more when we are successful. Blatantly obvious that success on the pitch is not paramount. Again, questionable as to whether it's paramount, because we've had certain people come out and say certain things about our transfer spending. Kieran here, my main question with Hitch-IN is, how much is Levy Enoch controlling him in terms of how much we're able to spend? Because like you say, Fernandes was our primary target, but we quibbled over a few £1 million. So a lot of this seems to boil down to money, which again, Steve Hitch-IN is not accountable for money. That's down to Mr. Levy. So again, is he hamstrung by what he can do in terms of the finance side of things?
He is. He is to a certain degree. But there's other ways of working with that model. Like we pointed out, going out and getting the best players between 16 and 25. Get a few of the players that the big clubs are selling at a cheaper price. There is ways of working within that model, and it's how you work within that model. You can't tell me West Ham are better than us. But they've had better windows, bringing in Soucek. They identified him, brought him in. They got Jesse Lingard in on loan when they needed some goals into the team. It's about how you work within that model and the players you identify to bring in. And Tottenham but Steve Hitch-IN just isn't doing it. I get he's under budget restraints, but it's how you work within that budget.
Mark Gregson, if you're there.
You know what, as well? Sorry, just to say, I think that you make a point as well. Why don't we, if we're going to call ourselves a big club, and we've got this academy who we say is developing into quite a decent academy, we've always had a pretty good academy. Why don't we just use some of that big club clout and just fawn off a couple of these players for 10 million? Because I see Arsenal not selling, but sending out on loan Joe Willock and Ainsley Maitland-Niles. And yeah, I don't think they're good enough for Arsenal. But you know what? I don't think they're that great. But they seem to be playing at the level that you think that they're at, which is Newcastle, which is West Brom. They seem to be main parts in that team. And then they're going to go and get sold for, like I said, Joe Willock has been quite a key to Newcastle. He's probably going to get sold for about 25 million now. If they kept him and then tried to sell him, they probably wouldn't get more than 10 million. So why don't we just kind of send out these players on loan and sort of just, do you know what I mean? Even if we don't play them, like Chelsea kind of did. I saw a comment in the crazy amount of comments that we've got about Chelsea just send a crazy amount of players out on loan and they sell them, and they'll probably get 50 million a year for them. And they probably won't even think about putting them in that first team, but they don't care about that, because at the end of the day, ruthlessly as it is, those players are assets and they're a means to an end, in which that could be, like I said, Haaland, Havertz, whoever they sign. Those players who obviously aren't going to get in the first team, but still in the academy being loaned, still have a purpose. And I'm pretty sure they're not told, mate, you're going to be surplus to requirements. But there's a reason why they're there. They're sent on loan. They make money for the club. And then they use that money to sign the bigger and the better players. Havertz was £72 million. It's a lot of money. Don't get me wrong. It's a lot of money. But they have sold a lot of players. Like I said, Paslic is one of those academy players.
It's a risk. It's a risk. He's obviously a very talented player.
Because you look at it, right? We loaned in Vinicius from Benfica. Luka Jovic at Real Madrid. We could have loaned him in. It's how you work within that market. Now, supposedly years ago, we set up this link with Real Madrid when we were selling them some of our best players. There's a link there. But we haven't utilised it. It's only been one way. You know what I mean? We could have loaned in someone like Luka Jovic, but we go and get Carlos Vinicius. It's how you work within the budget you're given.
Yeah, I'm going to come to a few comments because there's going to be a few things come up. We've got loads of comments coming through, so I'm going to read through some of them. Come in with some of them if you want to have your say on it. So we've got Kevin here, Mike Bassett, Englishman, Benson and Hedges, Cody, Matt, welcome Cody. I just changed a diaper that looked better than that transfer record. Cody's on one here. Roger's going to come here and work with this Muppet. Yeah, Kane and Son, Bale, but there's having what? Filet mignon with a side of compost. Right. So he's saying we are working with right the Yid Kid, we could have had Ruben Diaz. Mr. K, hi Sam and everyone else. Sorry for being late. I was on Will's Rants stream panel. Come on, you Spurs. Welcome, Mr. K. Again, we've got loads and loads of comments coming through. How could we have not have bought and attracted the right players after the UCL final? Crazy 2 years since the final. And I think that was the biggest thing for me. After that final, Poch came out in the press. We need to do this. We need to spend money. If we don't, we are at the end of the cycle as such. And it proved correct. Do you think, again, that we could have gone out and maybe have spent that sort of money, identified certain players? Because I think we had a number of players identified. There was all talks of Dybala and stuff like that. I heard all kinds of players linked to the club. We never got them.
I think Bruno and Ndombele would have worked. Like I said, we keep saying this. It's not necessarily that they didn't spend the money, because they did spend 50-odd million on Ndombele and they did spend money on this also. I just think if they kind of, instead of spending money on 5 or 7 players, they just spent the money on the 2 players that we needed, which was Bruno and number 10, a centre mid like Dembele, which was Ndombele, and then maybe you take a risk with a centre back and bring in maybe an up and coming young centre back. I would have been so happy with that. Like I said, if we had 3 players, Bruno and Ndombele and a centre back, we would have been we wouldn't be in this situation now. I guarantee you that.
More comments coming through from Mr. K. Matt is on it. Cody's there laughing, more laughter here. Mike, look at Leicester, Fofana, Tielemans, Ricardo, Castagna, etc. Bought wisely. And when you see names like that and where Leicester are, it is. But again, because of our toxic nature at Spurs, in terms of what I mean by that is this overarching Daniel Levy presence. I don't think they have that at Leicester. You know, their owner, their board don't seem to be as overarching, don't seem to be there. You know, when you see Daniel Levy in the crowd, he looks like that character. What's his name? Austin Powers character. He just looks like that guy, that bald-headed guy that's just looking like he's going to do someone considerable damage if they don't win a game. And is that a lot of pressure for these managers to be under? Jose Mourinho couldn't get it right. You know, Poch seems to be doing a lot better at PSG. I know he's got more tools there and all the rest of it, but again, he's out there maybe flourishing a bit more than he was at Spurs. Does it all stem back to the big man at the top, or the little man at the top, whatever we want to call him? Matt, what's your thoughts?
I think it does. I really do. And like we're saying, there's something like 28 managers we've been linked over the last 2 weeks, and I can't imagine any of those there that the Spurs fans are going to want Spurs. And that's it's because of Daniel Levy. And I mean, I wish it wasn't. I wish I could sit here and say, you know, Daniel Levy, he's the best owner in the league. He's done this for us. He's done that for us. But he is the thing that is holding this club back right now. And I find it hard to imagine any reasons why people could debate that. And he was in a position before where he had this team on the verge, I do believe, of European greatness. Not just that Champions League final, but in terms of a more kind of sustained, consistent thing. When after that Champions League final, such a good opportunity to attract players, to bring in incredible players that could have kept us at that level. And he didn't. He brought in Ndombele as well. So yeah, good signings. But there's so many players that we've brought in that aren't good enough for this club, or aren't to the level that we needed at that time, that fit a very, very similar demographic to the players that we wanted. I mean, if you look at the kind of physical nature and the footballing characteristics of Ruben Diaz and Joe Rodon, they're quite similar. But one player is a lot better and subsequently a lot more expensive. You look at, we wanted Dybala and Fernandes, number 10s, quick, good on the ball, they can shoot from distance, they can create opportunities. We wanted Fernandes, Dybala, a bit too expensive, we'll get this also. Again, a very good player, but not good enough for Tottenham Hotspur Football Club to become what we want to be. And
Matt, I'll just go to this point here, though. Again, this is Sam Fisher saying, not excusing Hitch-IN, but Poch gave his blessing to many of these players. Could we say the same thing about Jose? So under Jose and both Poch, they obviously must have had something. I hope they had something to do with some of these players being brought in. So could they be accountable as well? Did they make mistakes in what they were asking for?
That's hard, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, it's realms of the unknown, isn't it?
It is, but if they've been, look, what I'm saying is they was supposedly, and it's on the website. It says they're involved. You know, it's a collective. So Steve Hitch might go out and say, "I've got this player." The manager says, "I want this player." They kind of come together. We've got X, so you've gone out and looked for somebody, but we've got this player. Does he still fit? The manager should be the one making a decision at the end of the day. Yeah, you know what? I think so. Or he says no. Does this account for that? Because, like I said, we can all sit here and say Hitch-IN, done this, but there might be others to blame in there. I think there is others to blame in there.
But if you're a manager and you're going to your chief scout and you're saying, right, I want to right back, these are my preferred options, so these are my top 3 options, and they're coming back to you and saying, yeah, look, good players, great players, but unfortunately too dear. So what we're going to do is we're going to get you in a player with similar attributes, but a hell of a lot cheaper. So this is actually the right back you're going to get. If you're a manager and you need players in, like, you're not going to sit there when they're signing and say, oh, well, I didn't want them, but they're here, I'm going to have to utilize them. You're just going to lose your job.
But
So
isn't that what
Poch
Poch did though, David? Because we went through, was it 3 transfer windows or 2 transfer windows without buying anybody? And Poch said, I know he came out in the press and said he'd rather not buy anyone, but want to buy the right player.
No, look, for me, that was a cover-up. There was no money there. That was a cover-up. Poch was just saying, I genuinely believe what happened is Poch was spitting that in the news with probably what I reckon is guarantees that when the stadium is built, that he's going to have unlimited, well, not unlimited funds, but big funds there to spend. And I think that was retracted, and that basically, Poch got pissed off because there was promises broken, and then it all came to an end. That's what it seemed like to me, because there was rumours that he wasn't down on the training pitch, he wouldn't go down to do the training, stuff like that. So to be honest with you, that's what it more sounds like to me, is that he was given promises. You say this in the press, promises are, when we get into the stadium, the transfer funds will be there for you. Then promises were broken, and that's why it came to a head what it did. But 2 other things that I picked up on there. So, Sam, you were saying, Levy goes to every game. Even more concerning, he's every game watching the shit we have on the pitch and won't increase the budget, right? Another thing Matt said, one thing Matt said there is, we got to a Champions League final. After the Champions League final, no better time to be able to lure players in and to push on and kick on in that right direction, right? But we didn't do it. And the thing is, what's even more infuriating about that, we got to a Champions League final while we were building a stadium. So by the time we got to the stadium, everything was in place for us to kick on. The club was at its all-time peak, everything else. So everything was there. But what did it do? Just completely regressed.
It's a lot.
It's even more infuriating.
It does. There's a lot of comments coming, so I'm going to try and get through some more. Again, we've got Kieran here saying that Mr. K watched the video with Ben Foster said he was saying how smaller clubs end up with good players because they have small problems that big clubs won't pay for. It's a comment there. Brian saying, good evening, Brian. I would ask Hitch-IN what makeup he uses to cover up his own brown nose, as it's absolutely fantastic. Peter, the problem is we don't sign players to fix the problems on the pitch. We sign players with 3 caveats. 1, below market value. 2, they will accept below market value wages. And 3, resale value. Not all of that counts. I do understand that comment, but some of the players that we've sold on, we haven't made money back off them what we initially spent. More comments coming through again. Just going to go to another comment here. Look at Bell. Handled badly this season. Who wanted him? If Mourinho, he surely would have played more. Now he's looking to stay as Jose's gone. Again.
Can I?
Yes.
Can I just jump in? Just kind of go back to the point of that comment as well a second ago. And look, it may fall into this one and the signing of Gareth Bale. For me, there's a big difference between a manager giving his blessing on a signing and a manager saying, "I want this player."
Yes.
Pochettino could go out and he might have been the one who said, "I want Clinton Ng," or "I want George Kevin Akuda," whoever it was. Or he could have said, I know it's different time frames, but the likes of a Richarlison or a Rafinha, he said, this is the type of player that I want. And then Daniel Levy or Steve Hitch-IN could have come back and said, well, you get Nkudu or nothing. Well, then he kind of has to give his blessing for Nkudu to come in because he needs a player in that position. Mm-hmm. And look, come back to the point of a director of football, which I think is absolutely crucial. There are, like I said, those big teams who do have them. If you want to look at lesser teams, look at Lille. They've Luis Campos in there. They've lost some incredible players over the last few years. They've sold on Rafael Leao to AC Milan. They've sold Victor Osimhen to Napoli.
They sold, what's it called? Gabriel at Arsenal, and they got Sven Botman.
Yeah, Gabriel in as well. So again, a team who can sell their players, but what they have is a proper structure in there, and they've built an incredible squad of, you know, they've Jonathan Okone, Jonathan Bamba, Mike Mignon in goal. They have Sven Botman, as you mentioned there, Zeki Celik at right back. They have an incredible team, and I doubt there are any players in there that cost more than 15-20 million pounds. And then you look at 6-12 months ago, we had Jose Mourinho in there, a man who has a special relationship with Luis Campos. Luis Campos, a man who was open to coming to Spurs, an unbelievable opportunity to bring in someone like him to the club to make us what we want to be. And all of a sudden, everything falls apart.
I mean, that's
unforgivable, isn't it?
That's the start of an infrastructure. But it all boils down to the two people, doesn't it? You've got Levy, who's not a football man; he's a businessman. That is overseeing, or it appears that he's overseeing and has oversight of everything that's going on the football side. And then you've got Hitch-IN, who he's probably relying on to say, "Look, this is the budget. What can we do with it? What players have we got?" And then it's probably Levy who's making the decisions with the said manager. But I don't know. For me, I still think it all boils back to, I mean, with with Spurs as the situation that we're in, it does all boil back to Hitch-IN. Because Levy's going to be relying on him. The manager's going to be relying on him. And yet, like David said, if he's only got a success rate of 20%, I mean, we wouldn't keep our jobs. I know. But
it's a good stat, though. I like it.
It's a decent one. 20% of those players, you're probably right, David, that have only been a success or are good enough for the club. But I mean, if we were in our jobs and we were only performing to that sort of, we say less than 50%, would we keep our jobs? Probably not. So why does, I mean, how has Hitch-IN not had his performance under review? How's he not got any pressure? Just go right. So I look at Davinson Sanchez as a prime example, and I've used his name because I just wanted to make sure people know who he is. We paid £38 million for him from Ajax. So the chances are he'd been through the academy, he's developed in a club with the environment that we know, the footballing philosophy. He comes to Spurs, and it's like someone's cut his right foot off. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like someone's taken away something from his ability to play at the level where I expect him to be playing at Ajax. Now, I know he's still relatively young, but he doesn't look like a player, in my opinion, that should have been even playing in that system at Ajax, because I don't think he's good enough. So what was going on there that they did that? And then we've brought that player over to here, expecting him to now become X or Y. If he wasn't good enough, Sam, he wouldn't have gone through the ranks at Ajax.
So what's happened there?
He personally targeted Sanchez in that Europa League final when United bet Ajax. He came out and said it. He personally targeted Sanchez as the weakling, and he told Sanchez that as well. And so, if one of the best managers in the game, you can say what he done at Tottenham. He's not one. You look at his record with the trophies won. He is one of the best managers in the game. Now, if he's targeting him, he clearly knows he's not good enough. You know what I mean? Why is he coming to Tottenham, especially for such a huge fee? Matthias de Ligt was in the ranks at the time. You know what I mean? So why? I just don't get it. Why are you buying Sanchez at such a hefty fee when you know that Jan Vertonghen and Toby Alderweireld still have a few years left in him? Why not go and get Matthias de Ligt out of the youth, bring him over, put him into your academy, knowing that you have a centre back ready as soon as things are aging? With Sanchez, it was always a gamble. It was always a gamble with this guy.
For me, Davinson Sanchez is a perfect example of Darius, what you were saying a while ago in terms of the players of so many different managers coming in. Because like David said there, Jose Mourinho publicly targets Davinson Sanchez in a Europa League final in 2017, and 2 years later, he's a starting centre-back. I mean, again, I hate to bring things back to Lille, but they're a model that I really like and hope that Spurs could sometime emulate. They brought in Christophe Galtier as their manager. He'd done relatively well at Saint-Étienne. He finished 17th in his first season there, but they gave the manager time. They gave him a chance to instill what he wanted into that team. And 3 years later, Lille are about to win the French league over over PSG, who aren't they're no pushover. Although maybe during the week they kind of proved that wrong. But there's just so many opportunities this club have had, and there's so many models out there that we could try and replicate. But again, like I said, we're trying to pick the best bits out of everywhere, and you end up with a manager having a centre back who he publicly called useless.
And you know what? Sorry, just to add on to that, I think that David and Matty make points about Steve Hitch-IN being a yes man and Daniel Levy just basically controlling and micromanaging everything. We want somebody like a Luis Campos, who is obviously still available, to come in. The reason why these people like Luis Campos, like Ralph Rangnick, don't come into the club is because they will demand and they will want everything that they ask for, and they will be like, let me do my thing and I will show you the fruits of my labor. I don't think Daniel Levy is going to be that person to do that. I think that he's still going to want his fingers all in their business, and I don't think they're men who are going to want that. I think they want the trust and they want that kind of responsibility to go to them and them to kind of take control of everything, because Ralph Rangnick, an example, took over as manager and sporting director for Leipzig for a while. So he clearly wants control of a lot of what's going on. So I think it's one of those things where are we kind of inevitably not going to do well while somebody's controlling so much of the team, or is it just a case of stumbling again, getting lucky with a manager? And you make the point about Gaultier, and obviously they did do pretty poorly when they lost their players, obviously the season before, obviously Pepe going and stuff like that. Yeah. But I think about him and I think about people like Potter, and I'm thinking, if you've got a system that can sort of put every single good player into it and they perform at a level that's above, like, say, 80%, then maybe we might not need to do as much. So again, I've kind of gone off, but maybe the right manager might sort of deal with a lot of issues that we think are outstanding. We never know. But for me, you can kind of get rid of all those questions by getting in a sort of a system and an infrastructure that works. And we haven't done that. So we're kind of, like I said, we are just guessing with what's going to happen to Spurs.
Yeah.
I'm just going to come to the final few comments, and then I want to come around to you guys just for your final thoughts anyway. So Sam Fisher here. Levy micromanages, worst of all kind of bosses, doesn't allow managers heads if departments to manage except the ENIC men. Good show, guys. Thank you very much. Kevin, success is now second place compared to how much merchandise this player can generate. True, very true. Commercially, we're doing very well. Is every manager already on their last season because they don't get the level of player that they want? Does anybody know the Arsenal score, by the way? Is it still
0-0?
Yeah, it's 0-0.
I have it on live here, don't worry.
Fantastic.
I think we all do.
we had Paul Mitchell to identify proper players, and he quit, frustrated with Levy. That's what we mentioned earlier. So again, I seem to think the relationship with Steve is more of a yes man type relationship.
And you only have to
go on.
You only have to have a look at, like, I named 3 players that Mitchell brought in terms of Ali, Trippier, and Toby. And he didn't bring him in it wasn't expensive. I mean, he got Dele Alli for what, 5 million?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, well, we just go back to what Hitch-IN's doing and the players that he's bringing in and the quality. Yeah.
And this comment here from Pilch58. We build squad in unbalanced way. Clark, Cess, Bergen, all brought in 2 windows, none established. Very true.
Can you imagine that 50 mil, what we could have done with that 50 mil? That's what makes me so angry. We could.
Oh, it does. Right, last part of the show now. So I'm going to come around to all of you. I'm going to start at the top. Mike, your final thoughts about Steve Hitch-IN. Is he hitching out or hitching? No, sorry. Hitch-IN or hitch out? That's better. That sounds much better than it does.
I'm just going to keep it very simple. I'm not gonna go on too long. I'm just going to say hitch out. Done. Gone. I'll pack your bags. Take you to wherever you want to go. You're gone.
Hitch out. Hitch out from Mike. Darius.
I'll keep it short as well. I say we've got a bundle deal going on at the moment from our Monday show, haven't we? We've got number 15, we've got number 6 in that bundle deal. I think
all on that jet flight.
Winks is also on that EasyJet flight. So Hitch-IN, there's definitely room for you on that deal, mate. We can sort you out.
10 kilograms free, Steve. You can take 10 kilograms.
I'll pay for the extra.
The rest of you will luggage, mate. For the extra luggage to go in the hodl if you would like.
No hair gel needed. Nothing, mate. Honestly,
I'll fly the thing as well.
Yeah, 100%.
Free. Milan is nice this time of year as well. Sure. There's much to go.
Matt,
just knows my fancy getting on that as well.
Your final thoughts.
Hitch out. It's time to Daniel Levy.
I love this. It's so simple for you guys. Hitch out. No messing about. Not even anything else. Hitch out. Mr. Irish Hotspur, David, what's your last thoughts on this?
Yeah, pack your bags, easy jet to Milan, stay over there. You know, just work for Milan Fashion Week magazine or something like that, and get out of my club.
Put him in some Gucci, mate. Put him in some Gucci. He'll be fine, won't he?
You guys,
our EasyJet flight is getting packed.
Oh my god, you guys have made
It's going to be full by the end of the season.
Literally brought tears to my eyes. Both of you down the bottom. David, where can people find you? Give yourself a big shout out. You did us a real big favor last time. Thank you for that. So give yourself a shout out. Everybody, please go across to this man's channel, growing by the day, growing by the number, fantastic content, and we want to make sure that he's up there with the likes of Mr. Hayes, who's also well up there. But Dave, do your own shout outs, mate.
Yeah, look, if you like what I have to say, you can find me over at the Irish Hotspur. Plenty of energy in me. There's I give it out in abundance. And look, I'm only getting bigger and bigger. I'm being asked every day to do more and more things. So make sure you hop on the bandwagon now while I'm still relatively small. And so you can be one of the ones, that was saying that you were there within the first 3,000 subs. I am on the march for 3K subs before the end of the season. I think it's achievable. So get over there and smash and subscribe on the channel. But also don't forget about Paxton Road. Absolute great lads. They were on my channel last week and completely made a show. A great show. It was absolutely epic. And they deserved every subscriber they got for it. And last thing is I am going live at 9:30. I'm probably going to change it till about 20 to 10 now. But, with Frenemies, Marcelo is back on the channel again. He's got the time off work to give us another episode of Frenemies. So when you're finished here, get over there and check it out. The Irish Hotspur, Ireland's #1 Spurs fan, and Ireland's only answer to Harry Kane. That's
a proper salesman. I like that. That's a proper salesman there. No doubts in it. No doubts in it. Matt, off you go as well. Do the same thing.
First of all, I'd like to disagree with David's statement that he's the #1 Irish Spurs fan. I think we've had a lot of debates about that. We've had quite a few debates about that. I don't think it's going to be
show there.
It's not going to be settled anytime soon. But I'd just like to make it known. Oh, Roma, make it known that I don't agree with that. Look, if you want to check me out, I was hoping to get to 10K by the end of the season, but that has crumbled and burned quite like Spurs' season. So it's a bit poignant, I guess. Head over to Matt Hayes' Tottenham Blog. Every type of Spurs content really you'll see there. I'd appreciate any support, and like David said, smash subscribe in this channel. Really enjoyed the show tonight, lads. Thanks so much for having me on.
Oh, thank you very much. It's great having you both on. Like I said, these two guys, these are the things, like I said, when you're in a family Spurs community, we all support each other, and these guys are just going, they're flying, and we wish you all the best of luck as we wish ourselves the best of luck. So again, like, subscribe, share, comment, Paxton Road TV. We want to try and get to where these guys are, but we just got to keep going, and you've got to keep supporting us. So keep supporting the channel, but keep supporting these other guys down there as well. Mike, Darius, you want to say anything about where they can find you on your Instagram pages, Twitter, everything like that, just before we go?
I don't know if you really want to go on my Twitter, so I'm going to say if you find it, then have fun. That's all I'm going to say.
You can find it. Mike, Hotspur Hustler?
You can find me on Twitter under obviously the name Hotspur Hustler, and the same with Instagram. I've got an Instagram account again, Hotspur Hustler. So yeah,
brilliant.
Where did Hustler come from?
Because he is one. That's what he is. He properly hustles people.
I can't divulge on live stream, David. We'll have to take it off there.
We might get in trouble. Might get into legal trouble.
You don't get names like Hotspur Hustler for nothing, mate. So that one we'll have to discuss after the show. But there's a reason for them hustlers. Anyway, like I said, I am Sam Spurs for Life. You can find me at Twitter Sam_Spurs4Life for the number 4, and the same at Instagram as well. But also you can find us Paxton Road TV at TV Paxton. Gentlemen, thank you very much. It's been a really good show. I've enjoyed myself. We've gone hour and 20 minutes. And I know, Dave, you've got to go and do your show, so we're going to get off. Thank you both again, Matt and David, the Irish Hotspur. I hope you'll be back again soon to do some more content with us. Thank you, viewers, for watching, and we are out.